Number 8. Katrina Phelan. On December the 1st of 2021, a teacher at Abraham Lincoln High School in Iowa was taken into police custody on suspicion of making violent threats. 37-year-old Katrina Phelan was suspected to have written a series of anonymous notes in which she'd made reference to an imminent act of gun violence on school property. Each of the handwritten papers had either been found by the teacher herself or inside of her classroom at the high school. When local police were made aware of the situation, they issued an arrest warrant, prompting Phelan's subsequent surrender. Upon interviewing the teacher, investigators determined that her threats of mass violence weren't legitimate and that she'd written the fake notes to incite panic among school officials. In at least one of the letters, Phelan pretended to be a student and claimed an intention of violently lashing out after being relentlessly bullied. The teacher's arrest came only one day after the Oxford High School shooting in Michigan. She ultimately confessed to forging the threatening notes as a way of expressing her concern that such an attack might unfold in her own classroom. In the wake of the incident, Phelan was terminated from her position at the high school and detained at the Pottawatomie County Jail while awaiting her case's legal proceedings. Number 7. Kane Mitchell. For a period of roughly 8 months in 2019, Kane Mitchell lived with his girlfriend, Lucy Smith, and her son Teddy in the English town of St. Neots. At about 3 p.m. on November the 1st, emergency services were called to their residence. After Teddy had gone into cardiac arrest and become unresponsive, he was taken to a local hospital and kept on life support for 10 days. Teddy was found to have sustained several critical injuries to which he succumbed on November the 11th. As Cambridgeshire investigators would eventually learn, the victim's health problems had been caused by Mitchell himself. Weeks prior to Teddy's hospitalization, the couple's neighbors had alerted local authorities expressing concerns on how he was being treated, particularly by Mitchell. Even though the latter had been directly responsible for Teddy's injuries, he was captured on video pretending to be a caring father at the hospital, crying over the victim while saying, "Come on, baby, Daddy is here." Shortly after his questionable display of emotion, Mitchell was arrested. Following a 4-week trial at the Royal Court of Cambridge, he was convicted of murder and jailed for a minimum of 18 years. Number 6. Solomon Shlomo Azari. A man was accused of racking up a $42,000 tab at a Florida hotel over the course of 2 months in the summer of 2019 by falsely claiming to be a relative of Canadian tennis player Eugenie Bouchard. According to subsequent reports, Solomon Shlomo Azari pretended to be her brother Will at the One Hotel South Beach in Miami, where the Bouchard family reportedly resided. Azari proceeded to charge a series of exorbitant expenses to the player's running tab, eating at the hotel's Habitat restaurant and drinking at its rooftop bar using her account. The hotel ultimately caught on to Azari's deception and launched an official investigation into the matter after a member of Bouchard's team disputed a $29,000 bill on July the 30th of 2019. When investigators showed Bouchard a photograph of Azari, she revealed that she'd never met him and hadn't authorized any of the charges he'd made to the account. He was taken into the custody of Miami police and charged with scheme to defraud, identity fraud, and grand theft. Number 5. Casey Smitherman. On January the 9th of 2019, Casey Smitherman, the superintendent of Indiana's Elwood Community Schools, used her own insurance to pay for a 15-year-old student's medical treatment. Court records indicated that the student hadn't shown up to school on the day in question because he was suffering from a sore throat. In the past, Smitherman had reportedly bought the teen clothes and even helped him clean his house. She'd chosen not to contact the Department of Child Services about his situation, however, because she feared he would subsequently be placed in foster care. When the student failed to arrive at school, Smitherman went to his house to pick him up and take him to a local clinic, where she pretended that he was her son so that she could use her insurance to pay for the visit. She later took the student to a CVS in order to fill a prescription for amoxicillin, which Smitherman also completed with the name of her actual son. The teenager reportedly tore the label off the bottle of medication because he knew it was wrong for him to possess a prescription under someone else's name. The following week, the police were tipped off about what Smitherman had done for the student, and she was consequently arrested on charges of official misconduct, insurance fraud, insurance application fraud, and identity deception. In the wake of the incident, Smitherman's teaching license was suspended for 90 days, and she was forced to resign from her position as the school district superintendent. Number 4. Rutledge Dees. In November of 2019, Louisiana man Rutledge Dees was arrested at his New Orleans residence on suspicion of pretending to be a mentally impaired teenager so that female caretakers would look after him. Dees reportedly created a profile on the online app Urban Sitter, which he used to hire a college-aged woman to take care of his fake 18-year-old brother Corey. When the help worker arrived at his home, 29-year-old Dees allegedly posed as Corey and pretended to be disabled. Dees' fraudulent behavior continued for about a year, during which his hired caregiver would regularly change his soiled diapers and treat him like an infant. The 20-year-old victim eventually grew suspicious of the situation. After examining Dees' profile on a payment service app, she realized that Dees, the individual who'd been paying for her services, was actually the person she knew as Corey, at which point she contacted the authorities. Dees was taken into custody on several charges, one of which was possession of a Schedule II controlled dangerous substance, as the police had found crystal methamphetamine inside his home. In December of 2020, Dees pleaded guilty to his charges and was consequently sentenced to 5 years of probation and 400 hours of community service. Number 3. Trent Freeman. In the fall of 2021, a deputy of the Gilchrist County Sheriff's Office in Florida was arrested for stealing $3,700 in paid sick time by pretending to be hospitalized with COVID-19. As revealed by subsequent reports, 38-year-old Trent Freeman had forged multiple doctors' signatures over the course of about 2 months. She'd done so to maintain the deception that she'd contracted a critical case of the virus and therefore couldn't be present at work. Although her falsified medical documents indicated that she was comatose in a hospital, Freeman had actually begun working full-time in the private sector, while also recouping sick time payments from her law enforcement employers. Her fraud was first detected on October the 5th of 2021, when the Sheriff's Office opened an investigation into the legitimacy of her medical filings. Shortly thereafter, she was fired from her position and taken into the custody of her former colleagues on forgery and fraud charges. Today's topic was requested by Philly John Lolo. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Donald Klein. Former fertility specialist and gynecologist Donald Klein fathered dozens of his patients' children without their consent. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, Indiana resident Jacoba Ballard, aged 33, joined an online forum for adoptees and donor-conceived children in 2014. While trying to find out whether she had any half-siblings, she quickly connected with 3 other individuals whose mothers had been treated by Klein prior to their pregnancies. Upon taking genetic ancestry tests, Ballard and the others learned that they were indeed half-siblings. The discovery was followed by the revelation that they also shared 4 additional half-siblings with the same biological father. Ballard subsequently cross-matched her DNA with public databases, and during the course of her research continually came across the surname Klein among her distant relatives. It was then that she began to suspect that the fertility specialist had used his own reproductive fluid in his past patients' attempts to artificially get pregnant. Ballard and her half-siblings confronted Klein about their suspicions during a reunion organized by the doctor's son. Klein allegedly confessed to carrying out the elaborate deception, which ultimately resulted in his DNA being used to conceive more than 50 children across the state of Indiana. In addition to having his medical license revoked, the retired doctor also faced 2 felony counts of obstruction of justice, as well as a fine of $500. Klein's widespread fertility fraud became the basis of a Netflix documentary titled Our Father, which premiered on the streaming platform in May of 2022. Number 1. Timothy Gatchell. Flagler College student Amy Blount and a group of her friends went to St. George's Tavern in St. Augustine, Florida on a night in November of 1990. At about 2 a.m., Blount went for a walk out to the coastline with a young man named Sean Nolan. They reportedly got into a fight at some point and then decided to return to their respective homes separately. The following morning, Blount's roommate discovered that she hadn't come back to their apartment, and she was subsequently reported missing to the police. Investigators' initial efforts to locate Blount proved fruitless, and after about 10 days they offered a $10,000 reward for any information about her disappearance. This led to an influx of tips, including one from a local man named Timothy Gatchell, who told detectives that he'd seen Blount in the downtown area on the night she'd gone missing. Gatchell claimed to have witnessed the young woman get into an older model car and drive away with at least 2 people. A few weeks later, a dog walker came upon human remains buried under a pile of logs and rocks in a deserted area on the outskirts of St. Augustine. An autopsy subsequently confirmed that the body was indeed that of Blount, who'd been beaten before being stabbed a total of 5 times. Investigators then learned that one of their previous witnesses, Gatchell, was a tenant in a mobile home on the plot of land where Blount's body had been found. When questioned further by the police, Gatchell eventually confessed to giving her a ride home on the night. They'd reportedly gotten into an argument which culminated with the man taking out a knife and fatally stabbing Blount. In the wake of the murder, Gatchell had pretended to be a witness, giving the police a false testimony in an attempt to deviate them from identifying him as a suspect. He was ultimately convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Thanks for watching. Would you rather pretend to be deaf for an entire year or never be able to remember anyone's name? Let us know in the comments section below.